Hello, and welcome to today's Your Author program. My name is Camille Campos, and I'm the Young Adult Librarian at the Benjamin Franklin branch of the Los Angeles Public Library. And I'm here today with my amazing colleague, Young Adult Librarian Teresa Mons from the Westchester branch, as well as our teen volunteer, Malia. It is our pleasure to host the Your Author series today. Before we get started, I just wanted to go over a couple of housekeeping details. Please feel free to use the chat box to communicate your thoughts, comments, and questions at any time. Also, please email the Exploration and Creativity Department at ecdept@lapl.org to be entered into an opportunity drawing to win the book, Symptoms of a Heartbreak. Be sure to put in the subject line, Your Author, Sona Charaipotra, Symptoms of a Heartbreak.
We want to thank our generous donors, Lenore S. and Bernard A. Greenberg Fund and the Library Foundation for helping the library bring these amazing author and illustrator programs to all of you. Today we have the pleasure of hosting young adult author Sona Charaipotra.
Sona Charaipotra is an author of Symptoms of Heartbreak, a co-author of YA Dance Duology, Tiny Pretty Things, a 2020 Netflix original series. A former People reporter, she writes for publications like the New York Times and Cosmopolitan. A co-founded Cake Literary, a boutique book packager focused on delicious, diverse reads. She has a master's in screenwriting from NYU and MFA in fiction from New School. Welcome, Sona.
Hey guys, thank you for having me.
Hi, Sona. For the question and answer part of the program, Teresa, Emily, and I are going to take turns asking questions, and then we're going to take audience questions along the way too. So for your first question, we heard a little bit about you in your introduction, but we're wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about yourself and your novel, Symptoms of a Heartbreak. What inspired the book or influenced it? And we would love it if you could read a passage from your novel.
Okay, so my parents were both pediatricians, and they, as Asian parents, they really wanted me to also become a doctor and take over their practice one day. And I never wanted to be a doctor, and I kind of made that pretty clear from the time I was a teenager. I just didn't have any interest in medicine. I could probably end up killing people, which would not have been great, since the oath is do no harm, first do no harm. So I ended up studying English in college, and then my dad was like, what are you going to do with an English degree? So then I studied American Studies and journalism, because at least journalism had a job in the title. And then I became a reporter at People, and then an editor at Teen People, which was the best job ever. I really missed that magazine. And then, so then he was like, go get a master's degree. And so I did in screenwriting. And then I got one in fiction too, because then I ended up writing books, but I've always been very much a student. So I like the process of learning through that kind of environment. And until the day he died in 2017, unfortunately. He used to say to me, you could still go to medical school, and I never did. But one of the things when he was in the hospital, I used to sit next to him and just work and read. And he was watching Grey's Anatomy. He never got to finish it because there's like 1,000 seasons. And one day, I don't know how it came up, but I was watching this show called Doogie Howser, MD, which I watched when I was really little. I don't know if Malia would know it, but some of you guys might know it. But it's about a teen doctor, and Neil Patrick Harris plays the doctor, and he's 16, and he's going through the trials of teendom while also doing his residency. So I was watching the show, and I kept thinking, you know, it would have been really fun if it was a brown girl, because the dynamics of being a South Asian teenager, where you sort of have a lot of restrictions on you, but then also like these really heavy expectations. They were just like, it's like every South Asian kid, I feel like, and I can't speak for everybody, but like obviously it's a thing in South Asian culture and a lot of immigrant cultures, actually. So I just felt like it would have been a really interesting take on the story, and so that's how the character of Syra Sehgal was born. And so she's a 16-year-old girl genius doctor who works at the same hospital that her mom does, and her mom's on the board, and she's doing an oncology internship. And the first day she meets a boy named Link, who happens to be a cancer patient. And you can imagine where it goes from there. You want me to read a tiny bit?
Sure.
Okay, so this is the scene, not the first time they meet. They meet in the elevator the first day. She's at work. This is the second time they meet. And so the thing that inspires Syra to become a doctor is that when she was 8 years old, her best friend Harper was diagnosed with cancer, and she was diagnosed by Syra, who noticed a bruise that would not heal and then started looking stuff up because her mom was a doctor and figured out that she had leukemia. And so that's how she got fast-tracked to become a doctor. So she's at the hospital patient lounge, which she used to spend a lot of time with Harper in. So I'll read from there. I flip on the light switch, and the brightening reveals a nondescript room, beige, concrete block walls, a couple of rows of waiting room style chairs, a sofa that's seen better days, an ancient big box TV on a black console table, and in one corner, a little kitchenette with a sink, coffee maker, and small fridge, brown and noisy, like the one they had in the studio I shared with my dad during my first summer at the Hopkins Gifted Program. There's a bulletin board near the window, still filled with photos of patients, some healed and moved on, others dead and mourned. Right there in the corner is one we stapled up there together, taken just before she died. Her parents kept in touch for a while after they moved away, but I haven't heard from them in years, and I can't find them online. Mom says they split up. The thought hurts my heart. I touch the image, thick with dust and age, and uncover a memory of me and Harper, age 8, bright-eyed and flashing our gap-toothed grins, before she lost all her hair and her will, before I lost her. It's all exactly the same, like we were here yesterday. A part of me is relieved, and a part of me is disappointed. I sneeze, once, twice, 3 times. A fine dust coats pretty much everything in the room, and as I head toward the window to open the shades, I can see it come to life, particles twirling in the sun like they're doing a little dance. Harper and I used to spin in the sunlight here, my dresses and her little kid robe flaring around us, the beams hitting our faces. She missed the sunshine when they stopped letting her leave the hospital. I twirl a few times, and then I'm sneezing again. 1, 2, 3, an endless fit of them, giving away to tears. They've just started streaming when I hear the word. Gesundheit. What? I freeze. In the glare of the light, I can just make out the shadow of a figure at the door. Salud. A male voice, amused. I'm sorry. It means bless you. They both do. The owner of the voice steps forward out of the shadows and peers at me, and I wipe at my face, trying to erase the tears. Or maybe I should say Jamatadi or Waiguru. Are you okay? It's him, Cutie McFreckles, the guy from the elevator. I take a step back, right into the wall and the window. Yeah, how did you know that? My left hand automatically grasps the silver clara that circles my wrist. Waiguru is what the Sikh side of my family says when I sneeze. Even Tara and I don't use it often. One of my lacrosse buddies, Thurin, is Indian. His family says it whenever I sneeze, which is a lot. Like you, he eyes me. Hey, you're that girl from the other day in the hall. I saw you with your mother. She's hovery, like mine. He steps forward, offering me his hand to shake like we're grown-ups. I'm Lincoln. Linkrad. You're the new kid. His eyes travel to the image I was just looking at, the one of little me and Harper. Maybe not so new? I take his hand. It's cool and strong. A ladder of bruises climbs up his arm. When I look up, he's smiling, and there's a tiny gap between his front 2 teeth. Little bursts of energy fire through me like static electricity, zinging all the way to my toes. The small hairs on the back of my neck stand straight and tall, and I pull my hand away too quickly. His hand travels towards my face, then into my hair. I step back. I'm not contagious, but you've got this. He flashes me 2 fingers coated with dust in your hair. That explains the sneezing. One half of his mouth lifts into a practiced smirk. This is the first time I can get a really good long look at him. He's like someone right out of Lizzie's favorite fan site, lean and tall, with floppy black hair that falls into hazel eyes that are sunlight bright against pale skin. Actually, it's a little orangey. He should be checked for jaundice, maybe. He's wearing a Beatles t-shirt, skater shorts, and kicks. His face is all planes and angles, long forehead, sharp cheekbones, and then there's that tiny gap between 2 front teeth, a little flaw in the otherwise perfectly straight, white toothpaste ad-worthy smile, the thing that makes him human. Well, that and the cancer, of course, which has made itself known with small bruises along his jawline. He's got a guitar case slung over his left shoulder, which is the thing that usually seals the deal, right? I should be swooning if I did things like that. Or maybe not. He seems like trouble. Diagnosis? Heartbreaker. Prognosis? I'm in trouble now.
I love that scene, by the way. That's my favorite.
I really like that scene too.
So cute. I'm like, oh. Okay. So we already talked a little bit about the relation.
You guys are?
Can you hear me? But was there a pivotal moment in your life, like as a little girl or older, when you decided this is my calling? I want to be a writer.
I mean, I was always a reader, like a really, really avid reader. My parents are both pediatricians, but my mom would always indulge my book habit. I had like the whole Babysitters Club series. I read the Vampire Diaries when they were actual books, and just a lot. Like I would just devour books as a kid, and I didn't realize I didn't see myself in them for a long time, but I never saw myself in them, period, because there was just nothing on the shelves that was a small round girl from Jersey. And the first time I thought about writing at all was in 6th grade. My teacher, Miss Pinter, she was amazing. She was a really reading-focused teacher, and the last half hour of the day we had reading time, and she had a special butterfly chair that the person who got to ring the xylophone that day to announce reading time got to sit in the chair and stuff like that. So she was amazing, and she would have us write a lot. She was the first person who ever said, "Hey, I like your story. I think there's something there. You should try writing more." And I never thought I could actually do it before then. But I also saw, the first time I met an author, it was a woman named Amina Mir who wrote a book called Bombay Talkie. And I was in college, and she came to do a signing at the school at Rutgers University because her cousin went to the university. And I never thought before then that there could be an author, but that was really the first book I saw where it was an Indian American teenager, and that was before YA was really YA. And also the book is probably more literary fiction because it's very it's pretty dark and dark in a different way than YA right now can be dark. But yeah, so I met her and I was like, "Oh, you're a writer, that's amazing." And she told me that I could do it too, and I would be golden, and my name means gold in Hindi. So I still have that book that she signed for me too.
Oh, that's amazing. I think it's really important too that people of all colors and sizes and genders are represented in, especially YA fiction too. So.
Yeah, and I think we're finally starting to see a bit more of that representation. Although the numbers are still pretty minuscule, as we hear quite frequently, but we're starting to see it shift, and hopefully we'll get more happy stories about marginalized kids as well, because a lot of the times it's still a pain narrative, but I think happy stories are important.
And as a librarian, a lot of teens get really excited. Oh, I see myself in this. This is awesome. So
yeah.
This book stresses the importance of family, and it also shows how being an overachiever can affect one's well-being. Are the characters in the book based on personal experience?
Yes, definitely. I would say in both aspects, like definitely in the family, like the family draws heavily from my own family experience. Like our family parties are about 30 to 50 people. We haven't had one in a really long time now. Like the last time we had one was February, and it was my kid's 10th birthday. And so that party was actually like 100 people. Um, and then we all went into lockdown after that, so that was super fun. But yeah, so like and just like a casual thing, like there's a scene in the book where they're celebrating Sarah's first week at the hospital, and it's 30 people at Pizza Hut, and I've lived that moment hundreds of times because that's what a small family party is for my family. But as far as like the overachiever thing and all the great expectations that are placed on her, even though she's only 16, I definitely see that in my community a lot. And I think that my parents were a little less pushy about things than some parents are. Um, Even though my dad really wanted me to be a doctor, but like I ended up being a journalist and then an author. My sister is a talent booker and my brother does animation. So none of us ended up being a doctor. And my husband's also a writer. So they didn't even get that, unfortunately. but they're excited to see the stories and see the books on the shelves. And now the Netflix show for Tiny Pretty Things too. So even though there's a lot of bare butts.
Well, I know you touched on this already, but speaking of Syra, she has a lot of responsibility without ever having had a chance to really being a child. She's not only confronted with death and illness, but also has to learn how to work with adults in a work environment. Do you want to talk more about why you decided to write about a 16-year-old being given so much responsibility at such a young age?
I feel like these days that feels very teen to me. Like, yeah, maybe they're not girl genius doctors, but a lot of teens have a lot of pressure on them. And like, I mean, like even little kids, like I have a 6-year-old, and these days, if they're in pre-K or kindergarten and they're not reading at that stage, it's like a big deal, and there's all these interventions and things in some cases, not in every case, because there's definitely kids who get left behind by the school systems. But like, there's a lot of pressure on kids and teens from a really young age. And I feel like it's so much compounded by all the social media and just all the technology and all the expectations. Like, you just have to have a presence. And like the idea, like there's a novel that just came out, I think last month. It's called Admissions, and it's by Julie Buxbaum. And it's about the whole college admissions scandal that happened in Hollywood with the celebrity kids. But I feel like, yeah, that's another extreme situation where it's a celebrity kid as the character, but like it applies to the pressures that teens face already. I think it's just, it exists. And I don't know if you agree with that, Malia, but I feel like I see it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that because it's really stressful, especially with everything going on. It's like, so much weight on our shoulders to be successful.
And like right now with this pandemic, it's like this whole new layer of stress that's added to it, because on the one hand, you guys are essentially having to teach yourselves to a large level because you're not meant to be sitting in front of a screen for 7 hours doing remote schooling. And I feel like it's still unsafe. I know this is getting into political territory, but I'm sorry, I always talk about politics. It's like unsafe to be sending kids into schools when there's a pandemic, and yet we don't have a system to help parents manage the situation either. So it's a lot. And I know you guys have a lot of pressure on you, whether you're doctors at 16 or whether you're just trying to be a kid, because I feel like there's a lot less room to be a kid now. The definition is different.
Yeah, it most definitely is. I can agree with you on that.
Yeah.
Okay, so my question is, so the book describes illness and the medical profession in great detail and gives an overview of what it's like to life in the hospitals like. Is that from your parents, or did you spend some time at a hospital to do your research?
I mean, like I did have doctors read the book. My mom read it, but also other doctors who are not related to me read it because I wanted to make sure I was being relatively accurate. One doctor who read it told me it's more accurate than Grey's Anatomy, which is saying a lot, but also not saying a lot. So, but she said, I know it's fiction. I know you have to take some liberties, but like she definitely helped me vet a lot of the medical stuff. Like in one scene, Syra's cousin has surgery, her baby cousin who's 2, and she has a brain tumor. And I had Syra performing surgery in there or being part of the surgery. And she was like, yeah, oncologists don't perform surgery. So I had to completely rework that whole scene. So it was really good to have actual medical professionals read it because I obviously wanted to be close to accurate if I could. But some of the atmosphere of the hospital definitely comes from my experience just seeing my parents work in the hospital. And then some of the atmosphere of the hospital comes from when my dad was sick. Like when I was writing the book, literally for 7 months, he was in and out of the hospital. And the whole family was just there, sort of like we would spend hours just sitting there. So observing the daily grind of what the hospital, how the hospital functioned. And I got so sick of the hospital cafeteria food. It was,
I bet.
I can never do au bon pain again because that was like the cafe they had there.
I'm sorry about your dad.
Yeah. He would have liked the book, I think, though.
This book has some strong female characters and show how previous generations of women don't have the same opportunity that women today have, like ourselves. For example, on page 174 through 175, when Sayara isn't ready to take her driver's test and cancels it, her grandmother lectures her about the importance of learning to drive. You have all the freedom I never did, sometimes too much freedom. So it hurts me when you choose to throw that freedom away. Women like your mother, as bold as she may be, they fought for that freedom. They earned it. So that it is given for you and your sister. You have to honor that. Do you believe that importance for a young female today and the generations to come be reminded that women did not and still do not have, in many countries, have this freedom? Like they aren't really given the same opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that's true. Just seeing the difference in my own experience and the experience of some of my family members who are in India. But although I do think it's also like a class issue because if you are coming from an experience where you are financially stable and you have money, you definitely have more freedom than if you're in a situation where you don't have as much money, whether that's here or someplace like India. And I think we're starting, I mean, in India, that differential is really sharp, but we're starting to see how sharp it is here as well. I think it's equally tough here, and you don't have as much freedom. If money is a thing that gives you freedom, I think, to a large extent. Regarding the driving thing, I don't have my license. I took the test once when I was 17. I failed it. I have not taken it since. So a lot of her angst about driving is my angst about driving. And I always hear from people that I need to learn to drive. I need to have my license. What if there's an emergency? It's just like the one thing. It's the one thing I can't do. Like, you know, what's wrong with me? Suck it up, get my license. But I feel like I should because I've lived actively in cities for like the last 15 years, but elsewhere I would definitely need my license. I don't know. I just don't know.
No, they say some people are meant to drive, and then there's others like ourselves who are be meant to drove around.
Yes,
you know?
that's it. That's
right.
I agree.
So much hope. I feel like I'm behind, like because I'm only 15 and a half, and I don't know how to drive yet. And a lot of my friends do. So sometimes like, oh, am I going to have to teach myself? Like, so you give me hope, you know?
Well, and like one of the things Sarah says in the book, or she thinks it, is that like, okay, they talk about cancer and life and death, and you can just as easily like be dead or kill someone in a car. So like life and death is like everywhere, really. Sorry to be depressing, but like, you know, so I don't know. It's a lot of anxiety, I think, that comes with that. And I also, so I got diagnosed with ADHD about a year and a half ago. And it was like looking back and looking at the symptoms, it's always been very present in my life, but it's I feel like it's very underdiagnosed in girls, and also especially in the South Asian community, mental health is not something that's necessarily addressed. But I feel like that may also be part of my anxiety about driving, because you have to focus. You have to be focused on the road when you're driving. And I don't know, there's just something about it like that makes me kind of nervous. So I'm channeling my own anxiety, and maybe one day I will get my license. My husband would really like me to, but we'll see. He's probably going to yell at me after this.
We have Uber now.
Yeah. Uber and Lyft and Via and public transportation.
Right.
Let's keep our carbon footprint low.
I know one good thing about being at home is that we don't have to face LA traffic every day.
I can't even imagine. Like, that is just like I've been told by friends like 2 hours each way sitting in the car on the 101. And I've seen it like when I visit LA. I don't know how you guys do it. Like
lots of audiobooks.
Yeah, New York City is all mass transit. I don't understand people who drive in Manhattan. It's just scary.
Well, as someone of South Asian descent, what was it like to bring your heritage into the story?
I loved it. Like, I loved being able to just share what my family experience was. And when we did the symptoms launch party, my mom was there and she cried, and she said like this is the first time she's really seen her experience on the page, which she's in her 70s. So like I feel like sometimes you don't know what you're missing until you finally see it. I felt like that growing up. Like, I didn't realize until I finally saw brown kids on the page that I wasn't there for that long. So now, like, and I've gotten some feedback that like, oh, you could have translated this more, or why is she so into her culture? I'm into my culture. That's what I wanted to write. So that's what I did.
Yeah, I totally love the use of language in it. And then throughout the book, like all the mention of food, I was hungry the entire time I was reading the novel. Even to today, I still want some pakora.
Yeah. I can send you my mom's recipe, but it involves frying. I'm scared of frying things, though.
And all the time, I'm like, oh, I want some. Who was your favorite character to write?
I think it was her dad. He's sort of like my dad. My dad was not an engineer. He was a doctor. And he always told me that when he was growing up, there was the three brothers. There was actually four brothers. Brothers had cerebral palsy, so he didn't have a career. But so the oldest brother was told he was going to be the banker. The middle brother became the engineer. That's my Uncle Hans. And then my dad, who was the youngest, he was told he was going to be the doctor. And he kind of wanted to be a Bollywood star. Like he always told us that he did all the theater productions. And we were like, why did your med school have theater productions? But that was just his thing. And he always wanted to be, there was this actor called Dilip Kumar, who was like from the 60s and 70s, really old school, and that's who he wanted to be, and he would like throw his jacket dramatically over his shoulder, and it was just so like a lot of that comes from him. And then like the idea that he was always like, you need to be a doctor, to me, I always laughed at it, because he wouldn't have become a doctor unless he was told he had to become a doctor, and he was, so he did. And the thing was, more so than anything else, I think it was that my parents had built their practice over 30 years, and they really wanted to see somebody take it over so it would live on. And my mom sold the practice to another doctor, but she actually works for that doctor, so she's still seeing her patients. And some of them they've seen for generations. It was the kid, and then it was that person's child, and then now it's their grandkids. So like over 30 years of like seeing families, really, which is really lovely, but I couldn't do it.
So your mom, she wanted to be a doctor.
Yeah, my mom wanted to be a doctor from the time she was about 7 years old. She had broken her leg and gone to the hospital to have it set. And she decided then and there that that's what she wanted to do. And growing up, when she did in the 60s and 70s in India, there weren't that many female doctors. And also, there weren't that many women who were working at the time. She's the second oldest of 10 kids. And she was the one who was like the smart kid out of the group. And my grandfather, luckily, was forward thinking enough to be like, okay, you were really into this. You really want to do it. So they put her in the convent schools, which were like the Catholic nuns and stuff like that in India. And she got a solid education and went to medical school and became a doctor. And she didn't get married until she was like almost 30, which is ancient by South Asian standards, especially of that generation. But that's what she wanted to be. And then, yeah, so then they had their own practice together for 30 years.
She sounds awesome.
She's pretty good.
Who was the hardest character to write? Was there a hard character to write? Or?
Yeah, I think it was probably, I mean, like Syra is really kind of a hard character to balance, because she was and she wasn't, because she was such a little grown up, and yet she was such a child. And I feel like that to a large extent has been my own experience, especially being the oldest kid. You always get the weight of things put on you. But like also at the same time, like just trying to find the balance of, here's the thing. Okay. So like I don't know if you guys have read Tiny Pretty Things at all, but like a lot of feedback we get on that is that none of the characters are particularly likable. And I think there's a lot of things about teenage girls. When you're a teenage girl, you're not necessarily likable, because if you have any motivation or strength or voice, you get told you're not supposed to. So I think that was the part where it was hard, because I was like, when I was watching Doogie Howser's show, the character of Doogie was really arrogant. But if I made her even like a fourth as arrogant, and she is pretty arrogant for who she is, but like if she was that arrogant, people would put her down after the first chapter. So it was a fine line to walk of making sure she knew her strength, but also like not beating people up with it. I hope I didn't, but sometimes I still get that feedback. So
I like that stuff.
Okay. Symptoms of a heartbreak tackles some hard subjects. How do you decompress from intense writing sessions?
With food, probably. I like to cook. I like to eat. I make a lot of chai. I also like to, like, the things that I put into the character that I always get feedback on is like, why is she so brown? It's the food and the Bollywood, and those are things I just really enjoy. So they're there. And yeah, so those are two of the things. I want to learn how to knit, but I don't have the muscle memory of it. That's something I want to do to try to decompress. Maybe I will try to watch some videos or something. But I feel like I need somebody to hold my hand as I do it a little bit. my mother-in-law knits, but she's all the way in California. So maybe I'll make her FaceTime with me or something.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you and Danielle Clayton founded Cake Literary and about your work in We Need Diverse Books?
Yes. So Danielle and I met the first day of our graduate program at the new school, which was for writing for children. It was the fiction program. Some of the professors are like David Levithan and Andrew Davis Pinkney and Sarah Weeks. So it's a really renowned program. And we just hit it off the first day. She was actually the person who diagnosed me with ADHD because the first day she noticed that in class I was doodling the whole time. And Sarah does this in her meetings too. I was literally just doodling the whole time. And if you looked at me, I'm sure you see kids like this at school, Malia. If you look at me, you just think I'm not paying attention. But if you talk to me, I know exactly what's going on in the classroom. And it's because I need like the distraction for my hands in order to process. But anyways, we started yapping like the first day. We just started talking, and we became critique partners, sharing pages of our work and stuff. And then, just talking a lot. And we talked a lot about how we didn't see ourselves as kids in a lot of the books we read. And Danielle said that sometimes she saw herself, but it was always like a slave narrative or a pain narrative. And so she was tired of that. And for me, it was just there was barely anything. And I had, at the time when we were in grad school, my daughter was 8 months old. And I was worried that she still wasn't going to see herself in books. And this was like almost 30 years after me as a kid not seeing myself. So that was something we talked about a lot. And then she told me about teaching at the Kirov Academy in DC, which is a really intensive ballet conservatory. And she wanted to write about it, but she wasn't figuring out how to approach it. And at the time, as a journalist, I was interviewing the cast of Pretty Little Liars a lot because that show was on the air. I wrote about TV a lot. So I was like, you should do something like Pretty Little Liars with the mystery set at the ballet conservatory. And she was like, that could actually really work. And then we just decided to collaborate on it. And that's how the series came about. And because we still weren't seeing a lot of high concept, fun, delicious books for kids that featured kids of color, especially, but other marginalized voices as well, we decided we were going to do something about that. And so we created Cake Literary to specifically create those kinds of books. And we've had some fun titles, like recently, like the Tristan Strong series, and Love Sugar Magic, which is like bakery brujas. And my husband's first book is coming out next. Well, it's this year now. It's 2021. It's called Sunny G's Series of Rash Decisions, and it's coming out in May. And it's like a cosplaying Sikh kid on his final weeks of school. He goes to prom with no date, and the whole thing gets upended, and he meets a girl, and it's like a 24-hour romp through Fresno, California. And it's got like a can't hardly wait vibe to it, which is a teen movie.
That sounds really fun.
And it's funny too. Oh, and they're cosplaying the whole night. So it's really
How exciting.
it's a fun book.
She kind of answered this already. What was it like to write tiny, pretty things with Danielle and to have a career on Netflix? I mean,
the Netflix thing is really, it's been surreal for sure. The funniest part is that my dad, when we first, I remember even the day we had the launch party for the book, which was 2015, he was like, it's going to be a Netflix show. He always said, like, his thing was always like bigger, better, grander, like that was his take always. So he had been saying that. So he didn't get to see it, but like, I think also he would have been a little scandalized by the bare butts, but it's been really fun to just see the reaction. And Danielle and I both definitely binge watched it in like a week each, and it's been really interesting to see the characters come to life. Like, we got to go to the set for 2 days and to just watch like Casimir Gillette, who plays Bet. She was like walking around, and she's like the Bet in our heads, except she's real. And they cast all dancers, which was amazing, because I've watched some series where it's a show about ballet, but you can tell that the actors aren't dancers. And here it was like they created a ballet school on set, and they had like 3 hours of class a day and dance training, and all of them came from dance backgrounds anyway. So it was just really, it was really amazing. And obviously some things changed from the books, but I would definitely watch season 2 for sure.
Can I comment on that show?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so personally, I'm a dancer. I may not come off as, I go to performing arts high school, so just watching that show, it kind of showed me like, okay, like this is kind of relatable how dancers will go to a certain extent to like get parts in the dances and stuff. And I personally, going in as a freshman, like there was like the upperclassmen who were rude to me because I didn't really realize until like I was like, oh, maybe then my teacher, like she talked to me about it. She was saying how, because I have a lot of more dance training than what they had, so that could have been a factor of why that was happening to me. So just watching that show was like, this is so true. Like it was just so amazing. So
you come in and you're like stealing the spotlight. They're gonna react for sure.
Yeah, because they were older than me. So
yeah, and like I danced when I was really little, like from the time I was probably like 6 to the time I was 11, with my sister, and we were the only 2 brown kids in the class, and we never got to be in the recital.
Oh,
Racism. That's the reason. But I have point shoes because I was obsessed with dancing.
Can you tell us about any of your upcoming projects you may have, and like what should readers be looking forward to next from you?
Yeah. So I have 2 that are announced so far. They were both supposed to be 2021, but I think they're pushed to 2022. So the dates are shifting. But the first one is called The Rumor Game, and it's also with Danielle. And it's essentially following the path of a rumor from the perspective of the person who started the rumor, the person who the rumor is about, and the person whose boyfriend the rumor is about. So it's also like 3 narrators. It's 2 of them are kids of color, a Black girl and a South Asian girl in this one. And it tackles a lot of heavy issues, but it's also a really fun read. And also it makes me cry every time I reread it because we're in copy edits now. The ending just hits me hard. So that one I think is going to be winter 22. So like, I'm not sure the exact date, but like early 22. And then the other one is called How Maya Got Fierce. And it's about a 17-year-old girl who gets her dream job at a magazine, but they think she's 26. And it's based on my own experience working in magazines, so it's pretty fun. So it's like the Bold Type meets Younger, except older, like a reverse Younger.
They sound really interesting.
Will the second one also be YA?
Yes. Yeah, both of them are YA.
I think we have time to get some questions from the audience. There's one question from Casey Cox. What advice would you give authors' perspectives to YA librarians looking to showcase diverse authors?
I think that one great way to find more diverse books is to ask diverse authors what they're reading, because I think it is a community. And sometimes, like, the thing with diverse books is there's been a lot of talk about diverse books, but sometimes they don't get promoted as much still by the publishers. And there are so many more authors writing and books out there than the same 5 that maybe get promoted over and over and over again. So I think that's a great way to sort of to find new titles and new authors is by talking to the ones that you are talking to already. For example, like if you ask me, like I can tell you about a bunch of diverse books that are about to come out, but also like there are resources now that didn't exist previously. There are a lot of, for example, there is the We Need Diverse Books has a database. There's a few other databases of diverse books. And I do think that there are librarians who are doing a lot of heavy lifting on finding, promoting, and certain booksellers too, on finding and promoting diverse books. And they're publishing lists and really being loud about at trying to get word about these books out there. I know you guys are doing that kind of work yourself. So I think like the more people are talking about them, the more we're going to hear about them. And then like, as far as the teens go, I think teens are really vocal about sharing what they're reading and what they're loving too. So I think kids know what they like and they talk about it.
Yes, diverse books are so important.
Yeah.
Our next question is from Jennifer. How do you select the names of your characters?
Oh, that's a good question. So some of them, I don't know, I have a thing for alliteration clearly with Sarah Sagal, but her last name is from a family friends that I had when I was growing up. Her first name is from the Bollywood movie star that my dad used to think was amazing, Saira Banu. But some of the characters I've stolen names from family and things like that. There's a character named Samantha Howard in the book, and that's literally one of my neighbors here in Jersey City. She works in publishing, and I would just see her in the morning and be like, "Hey, Sam," and then when I was like trying to figure out what to name the character, I was like, okay, I'll just name it Samantha Howard. And she knows, she's okay with it. The character of Vish is from my cousin Vishal. And he is aware. Yeah. And like, I just like, yeah, I swipe names. My daughter, Kavya, she really wants a character named after her. And she says that she wants it to be her full name. So not just her first name. She wants it first and last name. And I told her that my characters are usually in pretty shades of gray. They're not like just 100% good or 100% bad. And she was like, I don't care. I just want to be in my name in the book. And I can understand where she's coming from because I didn't see my name in a book until just recently. There's a book called Sona and the Wedding Game. It's a picture book. And it's about like, there's a ceremony that a lot of Indian cultures do at weddings where the bride's sisters steal the groom's shoes and then ask for money. And that's what the book is about. And it's a picture book. And so I was just so thrilled to see my name in a book like that. So yeah, so I don't blame her. I'll give her wish at some point.
Oh. And then from Brenda, she asked, what are some steps that helped you become an author?
I think the main thing was that I was always just a reader. I was reading a lot and figuring out what I liked. And then the other thing was just to start writing. I think it's a really intimidating thing in the beginning to actually write because you're like, what am I doing? And this is never going to be good. And I think we still, like a lot of published authors, deal with that anxiety daily. Like I know I do for sure. But like, I think just avidly reading and absorbing story in all its forms, including TV or film or even podcasts now. I think that's really a good way to immerse yourself in story. And then just actually putting in the hours, your butt in the seat and doing the work, which is really hard. It's not easy to motivate and like, it just takes forever. And, you know, they say the whole thing about 10,000 hours before you get decent at something. And as somebody who does now have a ADHD diagnosis, but also always had attention issues, that is a difficult process. And then just trying to finish things, I think, is really critical. Finishing what you start, which is still very hard.
And The next audience question is, what kind of research did you do in preparation for the novel?
I read a lot about just oncology in general, and I read doctors' biographies. There was one in particular, it's called When Breath Becomes Air, and it was by Paul, I don't remember his last name, but that book was, it's about a doctor who's actually a cancer doctor, and then he gets diagnosed with cancer, and it's his memoir. And that book shattered me, like, completely. So I read a lot of just information about oncology, but then I read a lot of doctors' memoirs and things like that as well to get that other perspective, because I can figure out the teen stuff because I've lived it, but like the actual being a doctor part of things, aside from seeing my parents and other people do it, like I hadn't experienced that. And then I also had, as I mentioned, I had actual doctors read for me as well, because I wanted to try to be somewhat accurate when I'm talking about this stuff, especially like about specific diagnoses and things like that. The other part of things like the stuff about insurance and things like that, I've literally seen my mom have arguments on the phone with insurance companies because they're trying to charge patients for things they shouldn't be doing and things like that. And then like I've donated to so many GoFundMes at this point, because the way the medical system works in the United States now is just, it's chaos and it's costing people their lives, literally. So I definitely wanted to touch on that, include that in the story because I've seen it firsthand. And just having been a journalist and a freelancer for the last 10 years, I've been paying for my own insurance for 10 years. And I've also experienced calling them and like dealing with them for hours on the phone to try to get something covered when I was not expecting a $2,000 bill for something. Definitely have experienced that. So that was part of my research too.
Yeah, when you wrote about that in your book, about the GoFundMe page and the cancer patients, it was heartbreaking.
Yeah, I've definitely donated to a lot of them, and I'm sure I will because who knows when this system will get fixed.
Yeah. I think we have time for one more question from Alex B. Often I find myself with many ideas, but then hit a roadblock. Have you ever experienced writer's block, and what have you done to overcome it?
I feel like I experience it every day because, as I mentioned, I'm harping on the ADHD, but it's definitely a thing. But I think it's a thing for a lot of writers. And I think that usually what's happening is that there's a piece of the puzzle missing. And until you kind of figure it out, sometimes it's hard to move forward. I'm very much a plotter, so I outline my story before I start. And my outline is pretty detailed. Like the longest outline I have is 38 pages long, which is just probably too long. But I like to have a roadmap before I go in, and then like try to not leave off at the end of something. So if I leave off mid-sentence, I can sort of maybe pick it back up. But I think when you're actually really blocked, it's because something is missing in the story. I'm writing an adult novel right now, and it's a love triangle. And so I was really blocked on it for a while, and I was trying to figure out why. And the reason I realized, and I had multiple conversations with other writers, and this is what helped me resolve it, was I knew why she wanted one of the love interests and why she would fall for them. The other one, on paper, like in theory, I knew it, but there was something not quite there about the character and I couldn't figure it out. And until I figured out what would create the balance, because I wanted you to have a hard time rooting for just one of the characters. I wanted the triangle to be balanced. Until I figured that out, I wasn't going to be able to move forward. So it was a character issue that was happening. But once I figured it out, I was sort of able to dig back into the story. So that was one recent incident. But like but I think writer's block definitely is real, and I think sometimes it's like do something else, absorb story in a different way, like go watch a TV show or read a different book or go take a shower and let your brain sort of unravel it. And there's been many times where I've just like, I'm struggling with this and I'm going to sleep on it. And my brain sort of unravels the story while I'm sleeping because it's just working itself out in the back of my head.
Okay. Do you think we have time for a really fast quickfire?
Sure.
Malia is gonna go ahead and ask you a few quickfires.
So the first quickfire that I have for you is your favorite dish, because you say that you like food a lot or you like to cook food a lot. So what would be your favorite dish?
My favorite dish, it's mentioned in the book. It's called Matar paneer, and it's so paneer is this like Indian homemade cheese, and Matar paneer specifically is a dish that has an onion and tomato base, and it's the cheese and the onion and tomato masala, and then just little peas. So it's got like these specks of green in it, and it's delicious. Like comfort food.
It sounds pretty good. The next question I have for you is, what is your favorite color?
Teal blue. It's the color of my sofa.
That's my favorite color too.
Ah, you have good taste. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
We may have lost her.
Is she frozen? Right. Mountains or beach?
Beach.
Sushi or tacos?
Tacos for sure.
Cake or ice cream?
Why not both?
Perfect answer. Ebook or book?
I'm sorry?
Ebook or book?
This is so controversial, but like ebook, because I have boxes and boxes of books, and now I have my iPad and I can just read. I can carry everything with me so easily. Not that I'm leaving the house now, but I have thousands of books on my iPad now. And also as a journalist, I was writing about books for a long time. So like literally I would get so many books. Like I would get 20 books a week in the mail, and it was just, we were running out of room. There was more books than people for sure.
I get it.
I guess you guys know that because working at the library, sometimes
we have, like for me, that's my
stacks falling down on your head.
My book. Grogu or Groot? Did I say that right?
What was it?
Camille?
Baby Yoda
Oh yeah.
or
Yep.
Groot?
Or Groot?
Grogu.
Baby Yoda. I didn't know his actual name.
Yeah, I didn't either. Camille was like, oh, let's call him.
Definitely Baby Yoda.
Well, I think that's a wrap. Thank you, Sona. Thank you to my co-host. Thank you, everyone. We hope that you have enjoyed this conversation with author Sona Charaipotra. Again, we would like to thank our donors, the Library Foundation, our behind-the-scenes staff, and all of you for supporting the library. Remember, you can request books on lapl.org and pick them up at any one of our 26 Library to Go sites. Or you can also use your library card to check out an e-copy or any of our other amazing online resources. Please make sure to join us for our next Your Author program with young adult author Nina LaCour, author of Watch Over Me, on Thursday, January 15th at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. It will be streaming on the library's YouTube and Facebook channels. We also hope that everyone has finished up participating in the Winter Reading Challenge and Code for Change Challenge. The last day to input your info is tomorrow, January 9th. Again, thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend and stay safe.
Thank you so much for having me. And I love libraries. We still use ours pretty much daily. So
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you.